What we've got here is the sub-assembly as we saw last week. And that one is the one going to the Leslie. This one is the filter. This one is the preamp. Now that's kind of hard to believe with nothing attached, so we should probably work on that.
Yes.
So Addie,
Bum bum. I soldered that up.
she just assembled one of her
Amplify Me kits.
yeah.
Available on tindy.com/stores/toymakers.
Pimping her stuff as usual.
It's true.
So anyway, I kind of like this amplifier because it uses an LM386, and when you drive those, they get really crunchy, which is perfect for this amplifier. So it makes a good little guitar amplifier, and we're just going to use it as a preamp in this circuit. Now, what I did here is I left off the 10K potentiometer that she said to install here, and the jack that she said to install here, and the speakers that she said to install here. So what I'm going to do instead is we've got our jack up here, so we're going to put wires from our jack to the inputs of the jack here, and we're going to use this potentiometer in this potentiometer spot, and instead of a speaker, we're going to hook the speaker output up to the ground plane that we established last week, and the potentiometer here for our RC filter.
Very interesting.
So the output of the preamp goes to the filter here, and we're just going to build the filter in space, 3D style.
Cool.
Yeah. And the output of the filter is going to tap over to that input line into the Leslie. That way we can keep our signal path as short as possible. So we know that this is shielded going down to the Leslie. Yep. Okay, so that's the plan. The first thing I got to come up with here is a good way to get that potentiometer, which has giant solder lugs, soldered up to this, which has little tiny holes. So
little tiny holes.
probably
Big solder lugs.
Probably going to add some connecting lines there or something, but we'll get it. Okay, so I've got some LED trimmings in here because it's nice and stiff. So what I'm going to do is get this one soldered up, and then we'll do the next one. This is the ground pin.
And we're just using leads from like old LEDs that we clipped or old wires or whatever that we clipped, because they're still electrically conductive, they're stiff, and still flexible enough to bend in the direction that we need to. That's probably why we don't use wire, or didn't use wire in this case, because we wanted to have some stiffness to it. Like a mummy whisker. You know, Tombstone.
Tombstones and mummies have nothing to do with each other.
Well, I'm sure they had stones that they put near their mummies, right? I mean, the pyramids are made of stone. So, you know.
Pyramid is a really big tombstone, is that what you're saying?
It's a really big tomb made out of stones.
Alright, so now we got our things there. And the ground one actually has to solder up onto this case as well. So that one needs to stay long, but these other two are going to get trimmed a bit.
So use them like guides. Go ham.
That one will go there-ish. And then these two will get clipped off. So I clipped those off, and I got this side soldered to that end of the potentiometer. Can we see okay?
Mm-hmm.
We got the center one soldered in, we got the ground one soldered in, and it's also soldered to the case because the case is electrically connected to to this, which is electrically connected to that, which is electrically connected to that, which is electrically connected here to the ground and shield of the entire amplifier system. Okay, so that brings it so that we have no ground loops between the preamp and the post amp. Okay, all right, so let's see, what's the next thing we need to do here? We got to get the signal from the input jack here to where the input jack would have been on Addy's LM386 kit. This turned out nice and rigid too, so that's nice. Okay, I need to find some wires and trim them up and stuff, so let's do that. For our connection from the jack to this board, we want to take advantage of shielded cable. This is such a short run, it's not really going to make a whole lot of difference, but it's always good if you can to shield audio signal lines, especially when they're so low level. And this is coming out of the guitar. So this is our lowest level audio signal is between this point and here. It gets easier beyond here. So I'm going to use shielded, and you'll notice it's the same wire we used there, so it's all going to match nicely. Now the shield line needs to connect to the shield part of the plug, and on this particular plug, that's the body here. The side of that 1/4 inch cable touches. So this is electrically conductive and goes out to this pin here, and then the tip comes in and touches here. So that's coming out to this pin. And as we talked about last week, blue is tip. So we're going to run the shielding line through here. And that's going to require a ton of solder because, you know, it's a heavy connection. And this one here. I've done my best to minimize the amount of length of the wire that's exposed beyond the shielding point, which is good to do. Just going to add some solder to this joint here. Should be all okay. Now to do this one, it's very, very thick wire here. So what I need to do is trim off any excess that we don't require to minimize the amount of heat that we're going to need to actually get a good solid solder on this. And I'm going to turn my iron up to like 900 degrees.
To crazy 100 degrees.
And hopefully that'll be enough to get this going. You really just want to let that solder pull into that wire. Okay. Don't breathe that, kiddies. It's bad for you. So that's one side of it. Now we need to find the length of our cable and get this side all trimmed up nice and set up for our pins here.
You remember which side is which, right?
Which side is which of what?
The blue is the topmost one because this one goes down this way. So tip, then ring and shield.
Well, I just looked at the traces on your board,
Oh.
right?
Okay.
So I can see that there's a trace going from this pin to one side of this potentiometer.
Okay.
Or to the middle. The middle? Yeah, it's the middle, I think. Anyway, there's only one single trace leaving this jack. Everything else is like connected to the ground plane. So I connected the one that was going off to the potentiometer to our tip line, and then I connected the shield line to the ground plane.
Oh.
Which is exactly what we want.
Okay.
So now hopefully this will all maneuver nice and neatly over and stay out of our way. So there we're at. First step of this is done. We've got our amplifier in place, we got our signal coming in, we got it running to our volume potentiometer, And we've got that grounded, so it's connected to the ground over here. And now we need to get our output lines coming out of the LM386 here and here over to some sort of a filter design. And that's going to be an RC filter, probably a high pass filter for now. So I'm going to take a look at a couple of the high pass filters I've done, passive ones, and grab one I know I already like. So we're getting ready to do our filter, and for right now the only thing I want on here is just a high pass filter. And we're going to do a passive RC first order filter. Simple. And basically what that is you have your signal goes through a capacitor. After the capacitor there's a resistor to ground. The high frequency stuff goes through easily, and the low frequency stuff can drop over to ground through the resistor. The higher the resistance, the less of it's going to go away.
Okay.
So what I have this set up for right now is we've got our speaker output here and here. I should use these colors just to make it easier, because this is ground. There's positive. Now this is connected to the ground plane on the PCB, which is connected here, and this is grounded over to here, to the back side of the plate.
Okay.
Okay, so our minus side is taken care of. Our positive side comes off the PCB here, and it needs to go through a capacitor to the wiper here of our filter. And what I'm going to do is use this, which is a 0.33 microfarad capacitor, to make that jump between here and there. Now, we want to have a variable amount of resistance to ground. So I'm going to tie this end of the potentiometer to the case here, and that'll bring us ground. Now, I picked this side because of how I want the thing to function. So if I'm checking my signal versus ground, you notice the resistor is at 10K right now. Okay? Now that's the highest that this particular potentiometer goes, 10K. So this is the most amount of signal we want to get through. We're attenuating the least amount of low frequencies. And that's with it rotated that way.
All the way to
So
the
when the knob is down to there, its low frequencies are able to get through. The more you turn it to high, the higher the tone gets, the more sparkly the tone gets. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now these values may have to change in practice, we'll see, but we're laying down the fundamentals of how it's going to be and physically how it's going to be right now.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start getting some wires together and stuff.
What's that, Whisker?
It's a toy maker road trip.
Da 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 da.
We've reached the maximum capabilities of our own shop, so we've come and taken over another person's shop.
Look at it. It's hardcore.
It is more geared towards metalworking, which is what we need to do today. We need to work on a box for the power supply. So we're over here visiting with our friend Peter, and we're going to take advantage of his tools and skills.
Tools will give you skills? Yeah. Mileage may vary, let's put it that way.
So, the issue is that we've got a chassis for the power supply that's steel, and we don't have anything that can cut it, which I believe is this one.
Yep.
So we need the amphenol connector to go into that.
So we found this box in the rabbit hole junk pile, and it's, I think, possibly big enough to use for our power supply enclosure, And it's got the nice IEC plug with a fuse and a power switch, and that's important. But we need to fit 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, as it were. So the basic plan is that this goes mounted up on the chassis, which we don't have with us at the moment, but on that flat spot on the chassis that we were talking about, it mounts this side, and the transformer is mounted basically in the outside of this box with this sticking up and that inside. And then our Amphenol connector goes here.
I see. In the back. Okay.
Yeah. And we...
Oh, so here's the chassis right here. And this will go up like this.
That's the basic idea.
Okay. Well, how are we gonna connect it?
We need to cut a round hole for that in the steel, and we need to cut a square hole for that in the steel. And I just don't have the tools to do that.
What are you doing? What is that?
Well,
Soldering iron.
we made some changes to the power supply. Now we've actually got an, what does this come out to, about 9 volts, 10 volts
Yeah,
DC.
somewhere right in there.
So we got 10 volts DC for the preamp over here, and then 83 volts
Yep.
for the field coil over there. And now it's isolated from the mains because we're doing transformer now.
I see.
This is isolated. This is not.
Great.
Because you were just doing basically you're doing a transformer voltage divider. So you get 120 here, and then this is the center tap, so across here you get 60 volts AC.
I see.
But not isolated.
DC, you mean?
AC.
AC,
Oh.
and then we
You feed it.
rectify it. And
Oh. And then you get 90, yeah.
So,
And so there are 2 tabs there. That gave what, 4 volts,
about 5.
5 volts when rectified,
Yeah.
and another that gave about
5 wasn't quite enough for the preamp. We tested it last night,
yep.
but the 10-ish that we're getting between those two is just great. It sounds wonderful.
So which one, the middle and this
2
one?
outside ones, I think it was.
Outside.
2 outside gave what?
So this is 4 volts AC, this is 4 volts AC, this is 8.
Oh, okay. So this is a what kind of transformer? Multi-tap transformer? I really like them. Those are handy.
Especially when you need more than 1 voltage
Yeah, no kidding.
or some strange in-between voltages.
And then so these 2 taps, why?
Tap.
No. I mean, why is 2 and 3 or 3 and 2 connected to each other?
There's 2 independent secondary coils on that,
Okay.
and then you gotta hook them together so you can configure that transformer, either run 110 input, which in case you put the 2 coils in parallel, or 220 but them in series. So we're set up to run at 220 in series, but only running 110 volts to it. So our output's half of what it should be.
So this has only got a few taps on it. Peter was just showing me one that's got a ton of taps on it, but I didn't think he realized that he's got an entire drawer full of taps.
Transformer core, right?
Okay. That's the ferrite core, right?
Iron core. Like that.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And I can't remember what these were. They're like A, B, and C.
Okay.
So for 110 volts, you'd hook 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and then put your line cord off with the ends.
Okay.
For 220, you'd go to 2 to 3, and then 220 volts between 1 and 4.
Okay.
Since we don't really care about this output voltage,
Okay.
we hooked 120 volts to 1 and 4, which then made the point at 2 to 3 60 volts. Because it's going to be exactly half of what's across both.
Okay.
That was the primary reason for using this, is to get the field coil for the speaker.
So this one's got a 5.
And we just happened to luck out on this side that when this was at 120 volts, this side turned out to be 8 volts AC. Normally when you put 120 the way you're supposed to do it, you got 16 volts AC.
AC or DC?
AC.
AC. Oh, right, because we still have to rectify afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to find the center of the box, which is 21.
All right.
And some change.
Oh, you can mark it too. Mm-hmm. Well, that's handy. What was that?
I made that little dimple.
Is that a punch?
Yeah, it's an automatic center punch.
Brilliant.
So it gives me a point to start drilling at.
Okay, and you're sure that's the one we want?
I'm not the foreman on this job.
Whisker.
Yeah, that's right.
The reason I picked that end is if you look inside the box, this sticks back way farther, so we need this space to put the transformer.
Okay, I capiche. That makes sense. Alright, now what are you going to use?
This is a step bit. And I only need to drill it out far enough for this to fit through.
What is that?
That is a panel punch, or part of a panel punch. Perfect. So what this guy does is you put it on either side of the metal, and these two little cutting edges, when you suck it through, cuts a hole through the sheet metal.
Okay. Well, how are you going to suck it through?
You'll see.
Big bolt. I'm just trying to decide which side. This will result in the cleanest hole, so I'll go this way. Oil.
Is this very sharp?
It's more of a shearing action than it is a cutting action.
Okay.
In fact, this one's quite dull, so this might be exciting. Exciting in the terms of me sitting there swearing and cussing. This in here just to keep it from going anywhere.
Figure it out yet, Eddie?
No. Oh, you just wrench it down?
Yep. Smaller wrench.
Cool. Can we get one of these? Whisker?
Yeah. The problem is that, you need a whole set because you never know which size you're going to need.
And you guys just happened to luck out that I had the size you needed.
True.
No, seriously, I was, went and looked in my drawer. I have like 6 of these.
Oh.
And I happened to have the right size one.
Have
It's a
it
much harder job if you don't have something like this that'll just fit.
I mean, you could do this with a hole saw as well. It's just, this makes a much nicer hole.
I had to use a spiral saw bit
Ooh.
and a drill press
Ugh.
through aluminum to cut the one in the temporary box. That took a long time. You hear it?
Yeah. It's very hard to get it, to wrench it.
No, it's actually going through
Whoa.
pretty easy.
What?
Now, if I didn't totally screw up, there you go.
I am thrilled to pieces.
Yeah. Panel punches are very, 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 very useful
Oh my gosh, they're like the best.
when you want to cut a round hole or
In
any
steel.
standard shape hole in sheet metal.
Oh my gosh.
So, here, look there. That was the selection you had to pick from, and you lucked out that I just happened to have an 1 1/8 one. So, I got ginormous ones, I got little teeny ones, but I have nothing in the way of a full set.
Oh.
And then here's what's left over.
Whoa.
Careful, sharp.
Yeah, that was pretty hard.
So you got the wave washer, and snap that
I
in.
don't know if I brought the...
I thought you peeled it off the wires before.
Maybe. Let me take a look in the box.
And just,
Yeah, I got it.
so then we can try and get that snapped on and call this done. cool.
It's a troublemaker right there.
They're really fun to get on. Drawer to this drawer.
What are you doing now?
I'm taking the burr off the inside edge.
How are you doing that? What is that?
It's a deburring tool, so it's just a little razor sharp hook. And you just run it along the edge, and it.
Because we don't have one in our shop, we normally have to use like sandpaper or emery paper.
Or a file works too.
Yep.
Yeah, magneto files often get used for that.
Two white wires, a yellow wire, and a black wire that needs to be resoldered.
Yeah, the black one is the ground on the audio signal. The yellow is the audio signal positive, and the two white ones are the AC that power the unit.
Before we do this, I'm just going to resolder those quick, just so you don't have to do it later. So once we get that in there, it's going to be a lot of fun to get back out.
So is that what you usually use to solder stuff?
Big stuff like this, yes.
Cool.
It's a 200 watt, older than dirt soldering iron.
Cool.
So I grew up on big one like that, and then one even bigger for doing like piping.
I got my grandfather's iron sitting somewhere
Here.
up on my wall, and it's seriously like ginormous. It looks like a standard pencil soldering iron, only like 10 times bigger.
This is what we call a whisker clamp. Every shop should have one. Black one was the one that was bad.
Yeah, it was just loose. So that looks good. That looks good. And now time for paint.
I think the yellow one's going to be coming off eventually.
Okay, I'll put that one out then.
We tapped into that part of the audio through the potentiometer through that modification. So we no longer need to put it in alongside the AC. Should be a little bit cleaner, less 60.
Oh, you got it. He says. You know the different things we tried to get that in last time?
You have to play with them for a while, and then you sort of get the feeling for how to.
Manipulate them?
So the next part is figuring out where exactly to mount this on the back of here. So I'm thinking it's got to go like that. And
Okay.
that should clear everything because this lip goes right into here.
Yep.
So I'm thinking we just line it up flush to the back there. And pick it off this way just a little bit just so we don't run into anything.
Okay.
Now I need...
So what magic stuff are you going to have this time?
we'll see.
Well, we obviously need 4 holes for the screws. And then
Yeah.
a square hole for the...
The screws I'm not so worried about. That's just simple drill and go. The tough part's going to be the screws for cutting the hole, square hole. Just because it's big.
I think we need a stepper bit, Whisker.
What?
One of those stepper bit things.
They're nice.
Oh my gosh, they're awesome.
They're awesome as long as you take care of them. As soon as they start getting dull, they suck majorly.
Well, how do you sharpen them?
You don't.
So
Buy
how do
another one.
you take care of them?
You don't drill into things you shouldn't.
Like what?
Hardened metal.
Oh,
I mean, don't drop them on the floor.
don't chuck them at a wall.
I'll let Addie use them.
Hey. So please explain why you were cutting into This?
I just sort of felt like this. No.
You can't unthread the screws from the clips, it just spins on them.
If I spent a lot of time and effort, I could get these clips off and save them, but they're not needed for... They were put on to make assembly of the transformer easy at the shop that was making whatever this came out of. For your application, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going with the hopefully more expedient way to get them off.
I see.
So then we can get this thing mounted onto the back of that metal.
Oh, clever. I'm not sure how we would have done it at home.
Got a pair of pliers and a good screwdriver, you can get them off too. It's just been there, done this. Hopefully learn something.
Is that an indexing table in the corner there?
Yep.
Nice.
Where?
That thing over there.
Oh.
So you turn the crank and it's calibrated in minutes. So you got 0 through 360 degrees around the outside, and then this does minutes of a degree. So you can if you wanted to put an even pattern of bolt holes around a part, you bolt it down there and then just rotate. And
Cool.
drill away.
And did you buy most of this stuff yourself, or?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Well, the tools I bought most of that stuff myself. A lot of the other stuff is garage sales and stuff people were throwing away. So I used an indexing table to cut those flywheels, the spokes in them.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh, that's
So
nice.
you've got indexed holes here, that set, and then you've got indexed here for those set, and then you remove the material in between them. So that sits in the indexing table and you can rotate it to different spots.
As long as you don't lose count, they all turn out the same.
Cool.
Not that I'd ever lose count like the one in the mill that has 3 spokes instead of 5.
One of these things is not like the others.
Still works.
Still works.
It's lighter too.
Which unfortunately is not helpful in that particular application. I always find it funny where these, you read about, kids who want like billet aluminum flywheels to lighten it up, and it's like, the whole point of the flywheel is to have mass to keep things spinning.
Did you do this one as well?
Oh no.
Because that's impressive.
If I could do that, I would not be here doing the job that I'm doing.
Check out the curve on the outside of it too.
That's impressive.
So that was made by a Haas
Yeah.
milling machine.
Yeah.
So
What did you get it for?
they were. I went to a machine show, and they were just
This
making
is swag.
Yeah, they were making parts. Like, here, you want one?
Yeah, that's what
That's
they do.
awesome.
I had some more floating around, but I don't know where they ended up. So these. Okay, so now we got this all stripped down. We need a hole about 50 millimeters. And then this way we want to keep it as close as possible to the transformer so there's not a gap. 55 and a little change. Yeah, 55. So 50 by 55. And now that I measure it again, I get a different number. Yeah, 50 by 55. 10 millimeters off the edge.
What's that?
This is layout fluid. Or it should be layout fluid. There it goes.
Whoa.
It's basically like a big Sharpie. Only
Yeah.
purple.
Yeah.
So it comes off with rubbing alcohol when you're all said and done.
Oh, cool.
It smells really good.
Spent a little too much time in the basement.
Some days. So I'm just waiting for it to dry off.
Solvent. I don't think Eddie's ever seen this before either.
Nope. Have you?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now you can see where the scrape line is real easily.
Cool.
I said this was 50, I think. So I'm going to go up to 60.
See, I didn't know you could use that for scraping.
It's not recommended, but you know, this is Harbor Freight special, so I'm not.
Everybody does it like that though.
Some of the machinist purists, you know, that go for the really, really fine tolerance stuff, if you did that to their calipers, they would kill you right there. But yeah, Joe Schmo, who does this in their shop on a daily basis, I think everyone does it the same way.
I think I've seen Matthias do it all the time with wood. He's got a cheap caliper that he just has set aside just for that purpose.
They actually make, can't remember the name of it, but it's basically just a block of wood with a metal shaft going through it where you can set the length, and it has a point for doing that on wood. I went all over to Rochester trying to find one of those one day, and nobody has one.
He just built it himself.
Yeah, I just needed to sit down and build one, but I had something I had to get done that day, and it was just laying out a bunch of stuff, so having one of those would have been like awesome, but I couldn't find one. So fail. I think that's far enough away from everything. So,
By the way, folks, this is Peter.
hi.
Hello. At Wire Engineer on Twitter, and Wire B as in baby boy, Wire B on YouTube. And he shows a lot of his videos there too. And he's one of our awesome Hackerspace members, whom you guys may have seen in quite a few videos.
So in theory, if I didn't screw up, that should go right like that.
Okay.
That looks good on that. It's a little wide, so I need some holes.
Alright, now what are you doing?
These are a set of nibblers, and if we're lucky, this sheet metal's thin enough I can use them. If we're not so lucky, then it's not. So, just cuts.
What?
Oops, too far.
Huh.
Let's see if I got something faster. Oh, that worked.
Is your hand okay? Mm-hmm. It was like shooting sparks into your hand.
They don't have much mass to them, so they don't hurt much. Sweet. Basically covers everything up. Okay.
Oh, we weren't gonna put it inside the case and then have it.
There's not enough space.
There's still electronics that have to go inside, the rectifiers and filter caps.
I see. What's that?
These are center punches.
Okay.
I don't have center punches at home, so I normally get stuck using a nail.
Yep.
We should visit more shops so Eddie can see just how much easier things are with the right tools. Then I'll just let her loose on the internet and she'll go crazy. Because I know she wants one of them nibblers now.
Dude, they're awesome.
I think I got that from Jameco like many years ago. That was fail.
What?
Oh, it just moved when I went to punch it, so
Oh.
I don't know if that hole is right or not. What are these? These look like 632s maybe? .632s.
What is that?
It's a tap.
Oh. What are you putting on it?
Cutting fluid.
Oh.
Tap juice.
Yeah, pretty much. Not very good on your waffles. We need the overly complex waffle maker.
Oh, the Belgian waffle maker. Those are good. The ones that flip over?
No. Like you put, the goop in this end, or maybe raw ingredients, and waffles pop out the other end.
Oh, funny.
It's sort of like the little mini donut cookers.
Wait, so these just look like peg hole reamers, kind of.
Yeah, same idea.
Oh.
Well, there's little threaded teeth on it that it's cutting.
Oh.
So instead of putting nuts on there, we're just going to thread it right into the steel.
We're still going to put nuts on it because the steel is so thin, you only get a couple of threads in it. But for lining this up and holding it there while I get the other holes figured out, that was just a quick and easy way to do it. If I didn't screw up, it should just thread right in.
You have a thread gauge?
Yes.
Where's the thread gauge?
You probably just guessed.
Well, I have my drawers of screws, so I just was like, that looks English, looks 632. Yep, 632 nut fit. Thread gauges would be... There's a set. Metric. English. And so, all the thread gauges, other than being all stuck together right now.
This is like...
Eddie's learning stuff.
I know. So much new stuff.
This particular thread gauge is... Oh, here, this one you can actually see. This one's 16 threads per inch, 18 threads per inch, and then you just line it up on the grooves. And if it matches, that's what your bolt is.
Fascinating.
So that's sort of what it'll look like once I get... Oops.
Huh?
A little bit of epic fail. There's not a lot of metal left. So it's going to be fun trying to drill those.
Okay.
So. Yeah, I'm going to be lazy.
What are you going to do?
since I missed when I cut this edge and it's a little too wide for the bolt heads,
Yeah.
I'm just going to snip 2 little divots like that so the bolts can slide past them, and then nuts on this side.
I see. Ladies and gentlemen, the nibbler.
The nibbler's great. At work we have a power nibbler. That can be a lot of fun. And then you have to start over because you nibbled too much. It's just like done.
Oh. The Cousins of the Needle Filing Company. It's a sister branch.
Still in the family.
Hey. You call me family, I call you family.
Only old time watchers, viewers will get this joke.
Good, because I'm confused.
Go back and watch the cigar box videos.
Hey.
There's the low
Oh,
voltage
yeah.
ones.
We want them on the side
Okay.
because the AC needs to jump from the power here coming in
Fail.
to a set of these, and then the field coil comes right back out of those.
What are those?
Dental picks.
Oh.
Say ah.
No, thank you. So washer and then nut.
Lock washer, lock washer, and nut. And the real question is how in the heck am I going to tighten the nuts in the back?
Carefully.
I like these helping hands things. Just this hand comes from nowhere.
Although I find that the whisker clamp is more efficient than the Addy clamp.
Hey now.
Let's make sure we didn't totally screw up and for some reason it doesn't fit together.
Hot darn.
A little overcut, but not bad.
Awesome.
Yeah, will do.
So now what?
Now we need to solder up the AC lines that go off to
Yep.
the Leslie to the same 2 pins that the AC's coming in on.
So you don't need this yellow wire anymore?
I don't think so. It's going to require some testing, but I'm pretty sure we can axe it. Because the audio is not coming in the amplifier down that wire anymore.
That is a cool machine, man. Look at that.
These are-
She's overly excited.
yeah.
Now, do you want the ground hooked up through the line cord? Or
We
do you
want the ground hooked up to the chassis ground.
Okay. You don't want to bring that in through the audio ground?
Well, earth ground here
Okay.
to the audio ground here,
Okay.
and that gives us our ground connection between these 2 things, this thing and the next thing down the line.
That gets full power. So what are you using for cording for your... Oh, we gotta put the rectifiers in there.
Yeah, and those are, we got one set of them here, but the other set is back at the rabbit hole.
Do you want me to, should we go pick it up?
No, I can wire it all up.
So what are you doing now?
I'm just moving these 2 connections down. And then I'm gonna go dig in my box of wire. Oh, so close. There's one of the low voltage. There's the next one. One more solder. Add a little more solder. And that's that. It doesn't look like it's going to short out on anything.
Yeah.
So now, are you ever going to use that one?
But if we can leave it in there, it'd be nice.
Oh, you got to find some wire.
I mean, just physically leave it in there, it'd be nice. We can
Oh, yeah.
desolder the lines from it if we want to.
I just want to know
That's
if you
fine.
wanted it actually hooked up so you could like plug something into it.
I don't care about that.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to attempt to steal the wires off of it.
Why?
So I can hook them to the transformer.
Oh.
ROHS.
What's that?
ROHS solder.
Oh.
Stubborn.
A lot of this might just be
This is wrapped up.
big, fat, heavy lugs. Oh, there's one. And I don't know why, but there's like 2 wires stuck in the hole and they cut one off.
You cut one off.
Oh, that's right, because that's where that other...
There were wires going out those holes. You just cut them off close to the lugs.
That's right.
Past Peter is always haunting future Peter.
Not always. Look at the teeny weeny little wires. Is that all that Leslie needs for...
It was fine on those. It doesn't
Okay.
draw a huge amount of current.
But they're so teeny.
You always swap them out with bigger ones.
Yep.
I've got like a... I think it was only like an 800 milliamp fuse in my test system.
And it never tripped it.
Well, except that one time.
Hmm?
But that's because I did something bad.
Did you try testing your voltage again with the whisker method?
No.
He probably wouldn't be alive right now.
Well, you can survive that. You just twitch a little.
For the rest of your life.
Actually, there was someone who was trimming trees and got hooked up on a power line. He survived. Doesn't twitch. Watch.
Much.
No, actually, he's fine. Just
A little grumpy.
he doesn't trim trees anymore for some reason.
Well, did it blow him back?
I wasn't there, so. I think more of it was just, trimming tree fell, sparks, excitement. Black wire broke off. So. All the lights in the neighborhood went out.
Nice.
You want me to throw a chunk of wire on here for the lower voltage, high voltage AC out to your rectifier card? Probably.
I was contemplating building it right off of them. Which pins are they?
It'd be one of the two with the big fat wire mess on them. And then...
Throw a couple of lines on it, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them yet.
Okay.
That rectifier has a nice hole through the middle of it that I can use for mounting.
Yep, and so
Right
does
to
the load resistor.
Which I brought that.
Okay.
Because you said you wanted...
Find a bolt.
yeah.
Now we got power to the transformer, and we pull off the center tap to get half line voltage out to his new rectifier setup.
What are we up to?
I broke the ground wire off, so I'm replacing it.
Excellent. Remember, folks, put things back where you found them. Well, unless you're hacking them together, in which case you can't.
So that's that. Next up, we got to mount Mr. Power Resistor here.
That's big.
So that goes to that.
So we still have a rectifier and what?
Big filter cap.
Big filter cap to fit in, so we have to keep an eye on where the power resistor goes.
And that bridge rectifier I'm using is very heat resistant, so it's okay if it's kind of close to that thing. I used one of the most overrated rectifiers I could find.
Nothing wrong with that. Don't have to worry about it going bad.
Mm-hmm.
Can you use the step bit again?
Yes! Well, I'm kind of surprised. Do you not have a drill press?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, there it is. But you'd rather use the step bit.
Just quicker, easier. I don't have to haul the drill press out.
True.
And, I probably just use the step bit in a drill press.
Oh, well.
In all honesty. Slip punch. One more.
Now what are you doing?
Just dumping shavings in the trash, but
Oh.
I sort of failed and dumped them all over the floor instead. Okay, Loctite. This nut. Yep. Last nut.
Glue?
Yeah, it's Loctite.
Oh, okay.
More or less glue for nuts and bolts. If you over tighten this onto this power resistor, you're just going to crack it. It's ceramic.
Oh, I see.
So I'm making it so that nut should hopefully not move once it sets up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll crank the two nuts against each other to hold it to the box.
Whisker, do we buy that power resistor or do we find it?
Somebody brought it by.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and I failed.
Why?
I forgot to look where this power entry is. It don't fit.
So it needs to be above the transformer.
Yep.
Maybe I'll get to use that hole as an access point for making a very nice and clean connection for the field coil power lines. I'll have to think about that.
If not, I can give you another nut and bolt and just put it in there and be like, ignore that nut and bolt. So this adds a little more excitement because there's other stuff in the way. What I should have done the first time. So this lip has to go under here, so I need enough space for that. And we got those green wires there. That's a better spot.
Oh, punch.
Not always required. Okay, it still closes.
Nice.
Make sure you heat shrink this one because that screw head's right there. You know, it ends up like right there over top of that terminal, which would be bad if they touched.
Oh yeah.
Can you flip it?
If I
Would that cause any problems?
That
You
probably
can
work
probably
better.
wire around it like that.
And you can always move it.
Yes, I contributed.
So the bolt on these acts as a heat sink. So when this heats up, it goes into the bolt and out through the sheet metal.
Cool. So what are you connecting now?
This is the ground.
Ah.
It's the audio ground for the amplifier. So it's the ground of the audio input. And that connects to the ground plane on the subassembly. It connects to the chassis on the Leslie. And it connects to the chassis here on the power supply box.
So all grounds are one.
And those are connected to earth ground right here.
All your grounds are belong to us.
Bad.
Awesome.
Basically, it's our star ground point. Best we can do anyway. Without bringing a green wire directly from the subassembly copper ground plane to that point. But it pretty much is very close to being to that point.
Dude,
There you have it.
this looks great. High five, everyone. We post videos all the time, so don't forget to subscribe. And follow us on Twitter at TYMKRS.